Imagine if we could use ice to achieve immortality. Right now, it's tough because we freeze. Ice crystals and living cells don't get along. Unless, of course, you're a wood frog. It's springtime in Ottawa, Canada. For Ken Story and Fred Schuler, science doesn't get much better than this.
Oh, there's a big Yikes. Oh!
The wood frogs they're trying to capture have just come out of their annual 5-month freeze.
Oh, look!
Warmer temperatures melted the ice from their veins. Their hearts began beating again, and now they're in the ponds, ready to mate. Humans would like to find a way to survive a deep freeze.
Excellent.
So we're collecting a few clues from the wood frog.
Oh, hello.
Part of their catch winds up in a lab at Carleton University. Here, cryobiologists Ken and Jan Story study freeze-tolerant critters in hopes of unlocking their secrets.
These are the wood frogs that were caught last night. They've spent the whole winter on the forest floor, and most of that time they were frozen solid. I'm sure these frogs thought that they were all done with freezing for the year, but unfortunately they're not. We're putting them back in the freezer today.
The freezer is set at 8 degrees below freezing, roughly the temperature of the ground in winter. In a matter of hours, they'll be hard as rocks.
We have fully frozen Rana sylvatica wood frogs. They're probably 50–60% ice now, and their hearts are stopped, their brains are flatlined, their limbs can't be moved, they would be broken off. Yet they're still alive.
But the most amazing thing is the fact that the wood frog comes back to life. Over a couple of hours, it makes a miraculous and complete recovery. Immortality might be ours if we could manage to do the same. So how do wood frogs manage to survive with ice? Unlike most creatures, their system is designed to produce and handle massive quantities of a simple sugar called glucose.
During the first initial minutes when ice enters into the animal, it breaks down stored compounds and makes glucose. Large amounts of these sugars pour out of cells into the blood and are moved to all the tissues and organs of the animal. This glucose then keeps ice from forming inside the cells.
Glucose protects the cells and also makes it possible for the frogs to thaw from the inside out rather than the outside in, as most things thaw. If you watch a wood frog carefully, its heart begins to beat before anything else moves, pumping blood to the rest of the system.
As soon as you thaw a frog, heart activity returns, then brain activity returns, then muscles return, and then they run away.
They make it look easy, but for the rest of us, coming back from a deep freeze remains the stuff of science fiction.
Now!
As science probes ceaselessly toward new frontiers, man's abilities approach the incredible. Today, human beings can be frozen alive.
People have always been intrigued by the idea of packing a body in ice and bringing it back to life years later. Needless to say, we've got a long way to go. But that doesn't stop some people from believing that one day anything might be possible. Today, for around $120,000 or a life insurance policy, a cryonics team will take a deceased body and store it in a tank of liquid nitrogen. The hope is that someday science will be able to coax another life out of a frozen corpse. Dozens of people have taken the plunge.
The balance in cryonics is predicated on a number of, I think, very shaky premises. One of the premises is that all of the damage of ice can be fixed, that somehow nanomachines or some magical device will come and fix all of the cells. This is very unlikely. The damage is so destructive that almost all cells are destroyed. Cryonics doesn't just freeze them at some sort of high sub-zero temperature. They plunge them into liquid nitrogen. And even if I take a frog that can survive freezing under normal conditions and mimic a cryonics experiment, the frog doesn't survive. So if you have money to spend, I don't know, I wouldn't do it.
Story and others are looking at alternative applications. In the short term, the goal is to find a way to freeze and preserve organs for future transplants. Scientists want to create a bank of human organs that will eliminate the race against the clock. Today, organs are removed, covered in ice, and rushed around in little picnic coolers.
By and large, a liver or a heart won't last a whole day, so you don't even have a whole day with an organ to get it from the person who gave it to the person who needs it. And at those sort of time scales, lots of people don't have the organ they need. We need a human heart that can survive 24 hours in any way possible to get from the donor to the recipient who's waiting with their chest open in a hospital. And so the short-term aim is to say, what has nature got to give us? Does it have to give us glucose? What gene should we turn on? What molecule should we pour on a heart in order to try to get it to be viable just for that little while longer?
At the University of California at Berkeley, Boris Rubinsky may soon have some answers. He's looking for ways to control ice by taking findings from the frogs and adding a twist from fish found in polar regions. In frigid waters, many fish avoid freezing solid by producing antifreeze proteins. These proteins latch onto tiny ice crystals in their blood and prevent the ice from growing. Researchers are studying the effects of these proteins on cells and tissues.
Ice crystals have a tendency to recrystallize, to bind together and form large ice crystals that eventually will squish the cells. Antifreeze proteins inhibit recrystallization from taking place, and we believe that this is indeed what's happening in nature.
Combining lessons from both the frogs and fish, Rubinsky's on his way to freezing organs. He and his colleagues are working with rats to find out if their livers can be frozen, thawed, and successfully transplanted. They begin by removing a liver from a donor and flushing it with a preserving solution that contains both glucose and antifreeze proteins. The liver is frozen, thawed, and implanted in a recipient, and the recipient has survived.
We've shown that the animal produces bile, and essentially the liver functions in that animal.
Rubinsky and his team believe that the prospect of freezing and storing human organs looks much brighter now.
At this stage, we're looking for the limit, essentially, in the time we can preserve the liver in a frozen state. And probably once we recognize the limit, we should be moving to human organs.
But when it comes to freezing whole humans, organs are only a small part of a much bigger problem. Until science learns to conquer ice on a larger and vastly more complicated scale, human immortality will remain the stuff of sci-fi thrillers.
Big evening out? Leaving your children with no dinner? You think they'll go to the trouble of preparing a complete meal for themselves?
They don't have to. Swanson's already done it.
Welcome to the joy of not cooking. Frozen foods dramatically changed everyday life in a way few other inventions have. When Swanson introduced its TV dinner in 1953, Mom thought she had it made.
Tastes pretty good.
Delicious, like my own home cooking.
The man ultimately responsible for turning the chore of cooking into little more than thawing was inventor Clarence Birdseye. In 1930, he patented a way to freeze his products so quickly that ice crystals remained small and didn't damage them. By packing food into waxed cardboard containers and flash freezing it between two refrigerated surfaces, he started the frozen food industry. Today, updated flash freezing methods are still used to keep ice crystals at a minimum. Ice preserves our food, cools our drinks, decorates our parties. And in Sweden, people actually build an entire hotel from it each year. We've learned to live with ice in more ways than one. And we've certainly found a few ways to enjoy it. Ironically, the quality of ice people fear the most is the same quality that provides the greatest fun. Simply put, ice is slippery, and sliding around on it has become a favorite pastime.
This sort of calms you down when you skate.
I like the contact, frustrating the other players, hitting the boards, the sound of the puck going from stick to stick, hitting the pipe and going in the net.
I like about it because it gives you energy, and when you like push fast, you go like faster and get air.
Oh, gliding with speed, huh?
Yes.
I think.
The feeling of flying.
My favorite thing about being on the ice has always been just the freedom that you feel, just the freeness to express yourself, the movement, and you know, sometimes even just the wind, the feeling of movement and speed.
Olympic champion Kristi Yamaguchi makes gliding around on thin blades of metal look like a walk in the park. The ice has become her second home.
We like it around 21, 22 degrees. It's a little softer, it's a little easier on our bodies because we're constantly pounding and everything on the ice. So that's my opinion. If it's too soft, it's really slow and you feel like you're skating in peanut butter.
It's no revelation to learn that under most conditions it's easy to slide around on the ice. But why it's so slippery isn't as simple as we think.
Basically, I think the way the blade creates movement on the ice is that the friction it causes melts the ice and creates a thin layer of water, and that water acts as ball bearings for the blade on the ice.
That's what scientists used to think. The old theory had more to do with objects on the ice rather than the ice itself. Scientists thought things like skates and hockey pucks created enough force to instantly liquefy the ice. But it turns out these objects often travel too fast to do that. Something else is going on.
If you think of an ice crystal, a molecule in the middle has got lots of neighbors holding it in place. One above, one below, left, right, front, back. It's held in there real well. The one on the surface doesn't have any neighbor overhead. It isn't held in as well, and so it can vibrate a little more easily.
Those loose molecules make the surface of the ice slippery, even at temperatures far below freezing. But there is a limit.
If you were to try to ice skate at 200 below zero, you'd find that it is not very slippery. That little disordered layer on the surface really goes away when it gets very, very cold, because when it's really cold, even though that molecule at the surface doesn't have many neighbors, it still doesn't have enough oomph to jump free. So when it's really cold, skating on ice is going to be more like skating on concrete. It won't work.
What works for a skater depends on who you ask. When it comes to the condition of the ice, everyone has an opinion.
Not too hard, not too soft, not too cold, not too warm.
Sometimes you can even see.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be foggy, it shouldn't be so cold that you cannot even move. It's, I don't know, it's a comfortable feeling when you go on the ice and you feel, oh, that's it.
Skaters agree on one thing: the condition of the ice can make or break their day.
You go through periods, I think, that the ice is terrible, that's why I'm not skating well. The poor ice does take a lot of beating, but, you know, there's always has to be someone to blame.
People have long been drawn to the natural beauty of the ice and the challenge of conquering this slippery substance. In the process, they've turned the ice into their playground. But far away from the world we know is another land of ice few of us will ever explore. At the end of the Earth lies the coldest, driest, and iciest spot on the planet. Antarctica holds some 7 million cubic miles of ice, storing nearly 90% of the world's ice and 70% of its fresh water. More than 2 miles thick in some places, it's heavy enough to warp the shape of the Earth. These days, teams of scientists are descending on the continent. They're on a mission to find out what the ice is doing and how it might affect the rest of the world.
There are a number of reasons that you go to the Antarctic, and certainly one of them is to ask, will these ice sheets change? Because if there's 200 feet of sea level locked up in the ice, even a little tiny change will be noticeable to people on the world's coasts.
Lately, the frozen continent also has been heating up, giving scientists cause for concern. Global temperatures have risen about 1 degree Fahrenheit over the last century, but parts of Antarctica warmed more than 4 degrees during the same time. While glaciers and sea ice are thinning elsewhere in the world, here changes in the ice are even more extreme. Parts of the continent are surrounded by huge shelves of ice that extend from the land and float on the water. Chunks from these shelves, a few the size of Rhode Island, have broken up and drifted away, eventually melting in the sea.
We have seen a few ice shelves that have broken off primarily in the Antarctic Peninsula. The cause is almost certainly warming. There are cracks in them where they have gone flowing rapidly past other places. You get melting on the surface, the meltwater goes down in the cracks, it weakens them, the ice shelf breaks off and it floats away.
Scientists are also keeping an eye on changes in the West Antarctic ice sheet. It's an unstable area that could be headed for collapse. Over the last 20,000 years, it lost 2/3 of its mass and raised the sea level by about 33 feet. Some scientists fear a sudden meltdown of its remaining ice could eventually inundate the world's coasts. Millions of people and trillions of dollars in development would literally be swamped. To find out where Antarctica might be headed and what the warming trend means, scientists are looking to the past. Here, too, they're pulling up ice cores from deep within the sheet. These frozen tubes store information dating back over 100,000 years. They contain records of past climate cycles that could help us understand what the future may bring. Most of the cores wind up at the National Ice Core Lab in Denver, Colorado. Kendrick Taylor from the Desert Research Institute in Nevada spends close to a month in this ice library each year.
You can think of the ice core as being a sort of a stack of annual weather summaries where each individual layer of snow contains a little bit of history about what the weather was like during that particular time of year. And by drilling those and reading the ice cores, we can read the weather reports and find out what the climate used to be in the past.
Everything that falls in the snow gets trapped in the ice in annual layers. Light and dark bands represent each season, making it possible to count back in time. Within the ice are gases, dust, and ash from volcanic eruptions and forest fires, all of it blown in by the wind. Tiny air bubbles hold bits of atmosphere from thousands of years ago. Taylor was startled by what he found in ice that is 12,000 years old. He tests an ice core that represents about 100 years and watches a graph that shows changes in temperature and precipitation during that time. The climate appeared stable. Then suddenly it jumped. The shift was major and happened quicker than scientists thought was possible.
When I first started studying climate, I thought, oh, climate change was something that would happen very slowly. It would take at least a century or two. When we started seeing these ice cores, we realized just how fast these climate changes could happen. Some of the climate changes actually occur in just a few years, maybe like 3 years or something like that. Others take more, a few decades, like 30 or 40 years to change it.
If the world keeps warming and the ice keeps melting, the changes could eventually interrupt the ocean's circulation that distributes heat around the planet. This system impacts the weather we now experience.
If the climate changes some in the right direction, in the right way, at the right place, that might shut off. And we've got very good evidence that in the past it has shut off. The shut-offs, and especially when it turns back on again, are very big climate changes, and they happen very rapidly, and they affect a whole lot of the world.
The leading theory of how the climate might change says that in as little as 10 years, we could experience the weather from a place 500 miles north or south of where we are right now. That means Washington, D.C. may suddenly feel a lot like Montreal. Agriculture as we know it would take quite a beating. But another, more radical theory suggests that disrupting the ocean's circulation might eventually plunge us into a much colder and icier time. Another ice age, sooner than we think. But until more results are in, scientists may have to leave the last word on ice to a man aptly named Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is great and would suffice.